Hey everybody, it's Joe Trippi, and welcome back to That Trippi Show with my co-host Alex Sashlow. This week, part 2 of our State of the Union. You have questions on the economy. What's going on with the Elon buzzsaw, and where are both parties going to go next? But before we get there, a potential ceasefire in Ukraine. Are we buying it? Alex, where do you want to get started?
Let's go to Ukraine. I know we talked about this last week. We started, but things have happened in the past week or so, Joe. As of us recording this, the Ukrainians have agreed to a 30-day ceasefire. As of now, I don't believe the Russians have also agreed to it. There are really kind of a lot of conflicting reports about whether the Russians are going to take this or not. I have my guess, Joe. What do you think's going on? Do you buy that it's going to happen?
Not really. And frankly, if it does, I just don't think it's going to last. I mean, Putin is going, that's what Zelensky was trying to say, is that you can't trust Putin. He's violated every ceasefire agreement and lied the entire way. And so even if he does agree to it, you can't, what Zelensky was trying to say is that none of us, and most of all the Ukrainian people, could not count on anything on it lasting at all, or if the signature was worth anything. So the question is, will he sign something and then break it immediately? Bet more that way than that there'll actually be a 30-day ceasefire. I'll put it that way.
It just feels
Uh,
like this is Putin taking everyone for a ride again.
yeah, well, it's Putin and Trump taking everyone for a ride. It started in the Oval Office meeting where the ambush set in. It wasn't just an ambush on Zelensky, it was an ambush on the free world. I think that if Putin signs this thing, it's just another part of the ride because as Zelensky was trying to point out in that Oval Office meeting, you can't trust it. You can't, you have to count on him violating it. And it's got to be not a one-sided agreement. Now, Zelensky's agreed. Like I said, I don't think that Putin is going to, it's not that he won't sign the agreement. It's just that he won't abide it.
It just feels it again, and I don't want this to turn into like a regular just wail on CNN thing, but CNN had something like Trump said Putin had all the cards. Now they're calling his bluff. This is not calling his bluff in the slightest. Like this is him calling everyone else's bluff.
And as Zelensky pointed out, it's not a game of cards. It isn't who has the cards. In fact, if the U.S. is with Ukraine, there's plenty of cards. I mean, if you keep using that analogy, Donald Trump says you have no cards. Well, yeah, because I'm taking them all away and I'm giving them all to Putin.
Right.
But,
Right.
none of us should have been surprised by that. And that's why, again, I think, okay, Zelensky signed the deal, we got 30 days, you're going to get a 30-day ceasefire. And then when Putin violates it, we'll see whether there's any, anything from the Trump Oval Office. We haven't seen anything from him, and since he came down the escalator, that makes you think, oh yeah, anything but a slap on the hand as Putin starts rolling again. So that's why I think you can't look. We all want 30 days. We all want the thing to be over, but we don't
Well,
want
in
it to be
different
over
ways. In
with
different ways.
with
Yeah.
yeah. No, but you don't want it over with basically after 16 days, Putin launches another attack and starts rolling again and tries to take more territory while he catches everybody, including the West, with no help from the U.S. off guard because they thought there was a ceasefire. So that's the kind of stuff I think we all have to be worried about. And frankly, with Putin and Trump, playing their game, I'd rather be vigilant. And again, I think Zelensky's actually done a pretty good job and so has Europe in terms of rallying to the moment.
That's a good place to jump back to what's going on at home, Joe. We got so many listener questions we didn't get to last week, from the economy to more on politics, so let's get to it. So we had a good question last week from Chris in New Hampshire, which I'll get to in a minute. But since we started talking about this last week, tariffs are escalating. Canada's put a bunch of retaliatory tariffs on American goods. Same with the EU. Joe, first of all, where does this end, and does it?
I don't think it's going to end anytime soon. I mean, Trump can keep flip-flopping back and forth and sort of quote, keeping everybody off balance, but that just builds so much uncertainty in all these industries, not just auto, but a bunch of places, particularly anybody who's thinking of building plants. Where do you build them? Where do you hire? All that stuff is creating the kind of uncertainty that you're seeing in his pride and joy. The stock market is not doesn't like uncertainty and chaos, but he's again all those Wall Street guys that were all so excited about him winning this thing are waking up to the one thing they can't stand, which is uncertainty and chaos. But like then you can say, well, wait a minute, did you not watch the first time around? I mean, how did you think that that's, oh no, it won't be chaotic this time, particularly when there's no guardrails, there's no one around him who, at least in the first term, you had people who tried to keep the guardrails up and tried to keep his worst instincts simmer down a little. None of
Right.
that exists now. No one, they, you see this whole, all this reporting that's coming out about how there's huge, massive fights going on and efforts to get him to back off on the tariffs, but he's just doubling down. He's telling them all to get out of his office. So no, this is who he is. He's floating crazy ideas and getting louder with them. I think Chris actually said something like that when he asked his question, if I remember right.
Yeah, he said he keeps announcing tariffs and backing off of them. Did someone get to him, or is this him just floating crazy ideas and then doing them
The
if no one
ideas,
allows?
yeah,
Right.
that's
Yeah.
where I got
The
that.
one thing
So I stole that,
and we've
Chris.
yeah, well, we've talked about this in the past. The idea that he historically is the kind of guy who is not Chris Trump has put out trial balloons where he'll say something that's just outlandish and then just throw it out and see the reaction, throw the chum in the water. But we've talked about how so many of these are just intentional lies. And it's a huge difference from just saying something, seeing if people like it and then doing it. But a lot of this stuff is he does mean it now and he is trying to follow through on it, which gets to you talk about a kind of what's going on in the markets. This is from Ann in Kentucky. Bourbon's export markets just dried up, and my senators aren't doing a damn thing about it because Trump is for the tariffs. What is Trump's economic endgame here? And Joe, I think you know why I picked this question.
Well, because that means more bourbon for us. It's, I think, what you're trying to say there. That if they can't export bourbon, there's more here. I think that this is the whole point. I mean, you've got whether the electricity in 3 US states that border Canada and are supplied, their electricity comes from Canada, whether those have tariffs put on them, raising the cost of electricity. You know, you have places like Kentucky and others, they can't export their product. Farmers, you go down with what's happening with the mass deportations that is costing more than they thought and not working, but playing havoc on those who in the fields harvesting our crops. At every turn, there's a real impact to, yeah, many of them are just maybe just crazy comments. And like you said, it's clear that on the tariffs, he really thinks tariffs is a beautiful thing. And there's not anybody who seems that they can talk him out of that. Others, you don't know whether he's still just distracting with the next thing. But in any case, even whether it's distraction or whether he's really doing it, like tariffs, there are real implications. Whole industries have got to figure out where they're building those plants and where are they going to put it? What are interest rates going to be for the borrowing and where the bonds are going to be? All these things are being impacted by in a downward spiral. The stock market's giving you some indication of that. While, by the way, that the market may be in a downward spiral, but the price of everything continues to go up. Yes, by 2/10 here, 3/10 there. And yes, the avian flu is responsible for a lot more responsible for the price of eggs than either Biden or Trump. But guess what? They're now going up $10, $12 a dozen. And he was going to solve it in a day. All these problems, by the way, were going to be solved in a day. Even the 30-day ceasefire that we'll see, it's taken more than a day. It's taken several days now to see whether even the ceasefire actually occurs. But that was all going to happen on day one or even before he took office. So all these things are, I think you're seeing poll after poll now where his approval rating, particularly on the economy, is in decline and lower now, I think, than any incoming president. Usually right now, the markets are going up. And so the Trump bump lasted like a month maybe, and now the market's worse than it was before the election. And we'll see, because I don't see any stability or certainty coming soon anywhere, whether it's in foreign policy or the domestic pain that he's inflicting. And I think this is a test for his base. How much of this pain will they take? Because that's who he's inflicting a lot of it on, is his base. I mean, those are the people who are losing their markets to export to.
How much pain can they take?
Oh, I think they'll take tremendous pain. These are people who, like we've been saying for eons, if he shot somebody on Fifth Avenue or in Times Square, they would say he must have had a good reason. So I think he'll appeal. He'll continue to appeal to them. Hey, this is going to be some pain for a little while. Hang in there with me. I think, yeah, I think his MAGA base will, but there's huge signs that independents are not. Um, Certainly Democrats never, but that it's widening. With independents, it's starting to be huge. And then, of course, Elon Musk is not doing him. It's which one's the king and which one's the prince is not helping him either. And so, I mean, because Elon's got even worse unfavored than the president.
Yeah.
And none of these policies are popular. None of them. I mean, like I said, they may be turning on its base, but I think even they are wringing their hands a little bit. I mean, I've had more than a few Trump supporters that I run into on a regular basis. I know them. I ask them what they think. And even they're doing like a hotel in Gaza. What the fuck? So I just think that there's some of these things are starting to create some cracks. That these are all things that I think are going to unfortunately, I think are going to get a lot worse and hurt a lot more people. We see this with bird flu, with measles outbreaks. I mean, there are going to be real implications. People are going to die because of and it's not ineptitude or incompetence. They just, RFK Jr., et cetera, the whole don't believe in vaccine thing, all of it is just, you can't make up the problems that they are creating that are going to get worse. The numbers of people who are going to be impacted and in pain. And again, with these health outbreaks, a lot of the people that are going to get hurt are the people that have become convinced that vaccines are bad, or that that they shouldn't be that to be told that you should go get a vaccination against this stuff, or even that we should be spending dollars on it. They're living in places where they won't get vaccinated against any of these diseases. That's what's happening with the measles outbreak. So I don't know, but I got my flu vaccine, my pneumonia, all that stuff. I think a lot of people who followed the quote old recommendations of the CDC are going to will go out and get vaccinated if the bird flu, if that ever, or something like the measles actually starts to continue to break out. But
Which
who's going to be
Texas, by
hurt?
the way.
It-
Yeah.
yeah, but the people who are going to get hurt are the
Yeah.
people who listened to this crap and bought it. That's what I'm saying. So it's just crazy that he's going to inflict even more pain. The more you supported him, the more pain you're the one that you're going to take. And by the way, there's going to be plenty of pain on the entire nation and the world because of all these policies. But the first strikes are actually the first people that are going to be in the way and get hurt initially, I think, are his own supporters. And whether they wake up to that or not, we'll see.
The one promise he's made that he hasn't followed through on that I'm not super upset about is what's going on with Bitcoin right now. Yeah, this is from Kevin in Nevada. What happened to all the crypto promises the government made? You warned about it for months, and you made a big deal about Trump's shitcoin. So, why? It is an interesting question. Why, with the people behind him right now, why he hasn't moved faster on any of the crypto stuff?
Look, I think first of all, it still is a pump and dump. You have no idea whether he's already made billions off that shitcoin. It, it soared to an unbelievable net worth of billions within minutes of him announcing it. And you don't know when he sold, how much he bought, how much he sold after it got launched. You don't know whether a foreign country bought a ton of it and immediately he took it, sold it, and now it's down. And by the way, yeah, here's another one where all of his crypto fanboy MAGA followers bought that coin. We don't know that didn't, you'll never know. There's no regulation. There's no nothing. So they all write it up. He writes it up, sells it, and now it's down in the dumps as his Bitcoin. And all the people who jumped on this stuff because of his promises all lost a shit ton on the shit coin. So if now that doesn't, by the way, it does not mean, and this is the crazy thing, it doesn't mean that when he actually does implement a Bitcoin reserve, Federal Reserve, that as the government starts buying Bitcoin to put in the reserve, that it won't go up to 150,000. And by the way, you don't know the same thing. There's no regs or anything. There's no regulation. There's no reporting. He and the Dawn and all, they could buy a whole bunch down here where Bitcoin's fallen to below 80,000 or wherever it is today. And they run it up to 150 on taxpayer dollars, putting it in the reserve they're selling it to the reserve buyer. I mean, it's actually, and that's what I was yelling about back when I warned about it months ago was no, it wasn't that crypto, it was real or that it was going to, I was saying they're basically telling everybody, and they did this before the election, vote for me and you're going to get rich in crypto. So first of all, those people, a lot of them voted for him because they wanted to get rich. They actually put other things they were concerned about to the side, right? I like some of his policies, but I don't like his personality. But boy, I'm going to get rich. I care about my wife or my girlfriend's rights, but I'm going to get rich. Whatever. They were able to basically on the promise of buy this stuff, you're going to get rich because Biden's going to regulate it and take away your chance to get rich. But I'm going to make sure you do because I love crypto. All that crap was exactly that crap. It worked because in the crypto enthusiast networks, if your basically decision point or contrast wasn't the economy, wasn't rights, wasn't even autocracy versus democracy. No, it was, hey, if I own Bitcoin or crypto and this guy's in office, I'm going to get rich. And if the other guy's in office or Harris is in office, they're going to regulate it and make it impossible, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Then which one were you going to vote for? A lot of those people voted for Trump. And remember, when you're sitting there and a couple 100,000 votes in a few states actually make the cut, things like that mattered.
Right.
So now that's all I'm saying. And still, that wasn't the reason to be concerned. I mean, that's a big concern. It was obviously basically a pump. That was the pump, part of the big pump. But it also included getting their votes. Then they dumped. They're dumping now. Anybody, and by the way, probably the few straggler dumpers are MAGA people that rode this stuff, that bought it, and then got caught in the downward spiral. But it's the corruption. It's the crypto capture of basically a big for sale sign to anybody out there, big corporation, billionaires, Russians, foreign actors. Hey, you buy a ton of Trump's shit coin, it's not legalized bribery. Because there's no reporting. It's just a simple pass through in which we'll never know what the deal was. We'll never know that the transaction did or did not happen, but it's clearly that he issued that coin. You can go back and look at where it's gone and where it's down now and who bought it to get it way up there. And did he write it up and sell? I mean, it's all insider trading, but there's no reporting. There's no insider trading law on crypto. It's just, that's what I mean. There is no regulation. There is no SEC. Doesn't exist. That's not what happens there. So it's totally Wild West, and he's taking full advantage of it.
You touched on it. This is one of my favorite questions we've got in a while. And before we wrap up, I want your take on where you see each party right now. I think we've covered the Republicans to an extent, but this is from Tom B. Longtime listener, broadly agree with the points you make and the insight you provide every week. Thanks, Tom. I really liked your episode about fighting Trump 2.0. Right now, that's all we can do. At the same
Mhm.
time, and for optimal long term impact, I firmly believe that a new, more tuned in, demographically relevant set of Democratic leaders are needed. He goes on, he points out Ruben Gallego, who gave a great interview on I think the Daily a couple week or two ago
New York
now. That was
Times
good.
Daily
But
Pod.
yeah,
Yeah.
he said, we have to stand for something. Being against Trump and MAGA isn't enough. We need to be in touch with the American people to understand what we face and have practical solutions. And we can't be afraid to speak clearly. Now, he sums up by asking, when can we play offense? So I'm curious what your reaction is, because right now, and I'll combine this with Catherine from Illinois' question, what is going on
Well,
with Democrats in Congress? It feels like there are some layups that the caucus could get together and focus. This is their moment to shine in the executive branch's overreach. It feels like we're missing layups, Joe.
yeah, no, well, this is I think maybe that podcast he's referring to was the one where I basically said, please don't listen to James Carville and play dead. And again, I point out, hey, I've agreed with Carville a ton over the years, but man, sometimes he can get things really wrong. And this is one of them. And yeah, it's not play dead time. It's everybody. This is not a false alarm. This is the real thing. And you do, and so everybody has to do their part. And I've said over and over again, pour sand in the gears, slow them down, fight them at every turn. But there's a whole bunch of things that need to happen. I mean, clearly, the Democratic Party itself, I think, needs to think. Well, I've said this too. Get Schumer. We need to change leadership in the Senate. I think Schumer may have been a very good leader in an era where you and the McConnell or whoever, we had eras where the two leaders of the parties in the Senate could actually sit down, work out compromises, get things passed that needed to happen. I think, saw the end of that era and then got caught up in the new game where none of that mattered and he couldn't do it. We're in a, we now have to be a strong opposition that opposes at every turn these illegal, unconstitutional, and policies that even if they are legal and within the Constitution are causing pain. Like again, if you talk down the need to go to get vaccinated, that's probably legal. I don't think there's anything that can be done there, but you're feeling you're going to help people are going to die because they didn't get vaccinated. What I'm saying is we need to be loud. We have to have a louder leadership, but also clear leadership that's opposition that understands the role has changed. It's not trying to be in the room, getting them to vote on a new bill to fund vaccinations. That's not going to happen. And so it's slowing down their dismantling of the health system, their dismantling of Medicaid, their destruction of the Justice Department, the Department of Education. And so the first thing I think is that all of us need to make clear, we think that we need opposition leadership in this, and I think predominantly in the Senate, because I do believe Hakeem Jeffries, new to the position, probably leans a little bit towards the Senate leadership. But if you had a Murphy or Chris Murphy or a Schatz or someone like that, I'm not trying to promote any one of them, but I just think a younger opposition with a bit in their mouth to be an opposition leader would be better for us. And I think that would make Jeffries a stronger and a better leader in the House. He'd have a partner. Or there'd be somebody you could partner with who wasn't trying to do the old game that doesn't work. Not with Trump and not with MAGA, the MAGA following he has in the House leadership and the Senate now. So I think all those things are true. At the same time, we have to focus on the 18 or so, whatever, they're more becoming apparent every day. But the first one will be in Virginia in the governor's race. Spanberger, that's going to come up this November. We need to win that. She needs to win it. Then there's going to be 16 or so. And there's other races this year, including New Jersey governor's race. We've been winning the specials where they've occurred, the few that have occurred. But fundamentally, it's the 16 or so key House seats that'll be coming up in 2026. We've got to forget about the party committees. We need to get behind really strong, pragmatic, not put our own feelings about left, right within our party aside and pick really good, strong, pragmatic Democrats in these people like Spanberg. Those are the kind of candidates we need to put forward to give us a chance of picking up those kinds of seats, these battleground seats. So we've got to be more pragmatic as activists. As the time it is right now where people say, even these people who say, "Hey, not red or blue, we need to be purple." No, we just need to be Americans that are for democracy and find candidates in these districts that, yes, will be Democrats running. And if you're a Republican, join us. But that's what it's going to take. Republicans and Democrats, independents acting as Americans, supporting pragmatic candidates who are the best to take on the MAGA Republican in that district that we have to defeat. We have to win 5, 6 of those seats to get a majority in the House and then really throw more sand in the gears and have an opposition House to what they're doing. But these are all
Right.
things that there's a role for everybody. We've got to engage. We as activists who contribute need to be more choosy about where we put our money. We don't have the luxury of going or basically going into places where really it's too big a jump. And this is, by the way, somebody who, Alex and I worked for Doug Jones in Alabama when there was nobody on the planet who thought you could make up that kind of difference in a basically a 65% ruby red state. But no, I'm not saying don't go into those kind of places. I'm saying look at the candidate, the Doug Joneses, the Abigail Spanbergers. We need the candidates find pragmatic, solid candidates like that, because those kind of candidates can win the kind of districts like Virginia, for instance, but also believe me, we have candidates like that will win the battleground House seats because these are places that have gone back and forth. They're not 35% Republican plus Republican states or districts. So we find the right candidates, we can win these seats, and we need to back them, and we need to change leadership. But those are the
Yeah.
kinds of things I think we need. And individuals in the Senate and the House, on their committees, in their roles, need to slow up nominations and do everything they can to stop the pace of what they're doing, because we're in a race to 2026. They're going to try to do everything they can to throw as much damage as they can into the process and win in 2026. We have to stall it, slow it down, fight them, and then win in 2026 and make him literally at that point, weaken him even further.
No, that's a really good place to wrap up today. And I think you've got some news on Says Us to share.
Yeah. So today, folks, we've been waiting for a while because after we got Says Us into beta and had roughly 10,000 people join us, many of them are listeners on this podcast. The beta was successful in the sense that both Google put us in their app store for Androids about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and Apple put us in their app store for iPhones, iOS devices about 8 or 9 days ago. So now that we're in those app stores today, we launched publicly, calling on people to join Says Us. And I think people will be interested to know that a lot of people, I raised the money to build the technology. It came from people like Doug Jones, Dick Gephardt, Stephanie Shriak, who was the past president of Emily's List, and others, and all who wanted to build and launch a pro-democracy network that was civil, built community, built trust. And so today we launched it. Adam Kensinger has signed on as an advisor and has joined, and he's posting there. And so we're trying to build a real pro-democracy movement with a pro-democracy kind of information hub and social network that's you're not going to get yelled at because we don't let bots on it. And anonymous name calling is never going to be amplified on the network. So it's a very different thing, and it's working. And people are signing up. I hope if you haven't had time that you'll go to the app store you'll download Says Us, SEZUS, Says Us, and give it a whirl and actually help build the conversation, help make it happen. Because look, democracy is hard. It's not, as I keep trying to say, and Part says this all the time, autocracy and kings and dictators, that's been the default position for human beings for about 10,000 years. Democracy is the outlier, and it only survives for a couple hundred years at a time when it does happen. And it's hard and it can't be taken for granted. And when it faces a movement, an autocracy movement, then the pro-democracy side, these aren't just elections anymore. We have to build a pro-democracy movement, not just here, but around the world, and build that community and make it grow. And I believe there are millions of Americans who still believe in this and will join us, but I hope you'll help by telling your friends and by joining it yourself. So thanks a lot. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week. This podcast will always be free and is part of Resolute Square. They've got some interesting information and news coming out in the next few days as well. So check out the latest at resolutesquare.com/Trippi. Please subscribe to That Trippi Show and leave a review on Apple or wherever you listen. Also, if you're listening to this episode on YouTube, and a lot of people do, please like and subscribe to get alerts when we post the next episode. You can always send us a question to thattrippishow@gmail.com or leave us a question in a review on iTunes. We'll see you next week. Thanks for listening.
Resolute Square.